Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of A Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, Liz Rhodes, and Lew Bryson. Plus, this week's special guest, Jared Himstedt from Balcones Distilling. I'm going to let your host give an extended introduction to Jared in just a moment. But real quick, before we do that, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co. And as always, just want to point out a few ways that you can interact with your hosts and their guests throughout the show today. So on your right, you'll see a chat box. Feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're joining us from around the world. It's always great to see that. If you have a question at any point during the show, there's a little button at the bottom of the screen that says ask a question. So just click that button and enter your question in down there. I'll be keeping an eye out for those throughout the show today. And last but not least, feel free to invite anyone you know to join us. There's a share button at the top that makes it easy to do that. But with that out of the way, Marty, Liz, Lew, I'll turn things over to you now.
Thanks there, Will. Remember, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask, does Liz Rhodes know who said that quote back in 1960? Liz?
I don't know.
Oh my God! All right. He was a little guy, not that famous. Just the president of the United States, John F. Kennedy.
Okay, great.
History.
This isn't a show about history. I'm sorry. I don't.
Oh.
It's always a show about history.
Did you lead with that because he died in Dallas? Is that the connection? Okay, I see where you're going.
Wow.
Just connecting dots.
Oh, just real quick, weird thing. I found out, I was standing in Dealey Plaza when I found out that John F. Kennedy Jr. died. Isn't that the weirdest coincidence?
Oh.
I was kind of
thought you
guy
meant that
said,
he
hey,
died
did
in
you hear
Dealey
Kennedy
Plaza.
die?
I'm like, I don't think so, but that's just happened to be wow.
Yeah.
That is a kind of
That was
weird little thing.
Hello, everyone. I'm Martin Duffy, former senior master of whiskey for DIAGEO. Little job I had for 14 glorious years till I was defrocked. And then for 18 not so glorious months, I was the national brand representative for Benedictine French liqueur.
Famous chugging liquor.
Yes, good.
But don't spill it.
You want a lot of diabetes and sticky. That's the drink. It's delicious. 8 glorious years as the co-producer of Chicago Independent Spirit Expo, and for the last 7 years, I have been the sole brand representative of Glencairn Crystal in North America.
I had a twofer today.
Liz just likes her super cold vodka as a palate cleanser.
It's a little effervescent as well.
Yeah. What's effervescent vodka?
It's a new trend.
The new seltzer vodka. No.
It's like bubble tea.
All right there, Dusty Rhodes.
Awesome. Thanks, Marty. Hey, everyone. I'm Liz Rhodes, technical distiller and spirit consultant. Have over a decade experience in alcoholic beverage, spanning across several different product types and spirits, including beer, rum, vodka. But my particular favorite and expertise, Marty, is not bubbly vodka. It is indeed whiskey.
That's what you say. But
I spent most of my career at a tiny little mom and pop known as DIAGEO, but am now currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. And hello, are you curious? Want to learn more? That's okay. If you actually scroll down to the About the Host section, there's a little link to my website. Check it out.
Curious.
Lew?
Thanks, Liz. I'm Lew Bryson. I don't make whiskey or sell it. I write about it. I was the managing editor of Whisky Advocate Magazine for 20 years while we built it into the globe-girdling force that it is. I'm currently a senior drinks writer for the award-winning Half Full Drinks website on the Daily Beast website. Not sure how that works. Anyway, I write for the Daily Beast. I also have my books.
Oh my God.
Plugging it. Yeah, baby. There they are. And today I am drinking whatever the hell Jared tells me to. So that's where we are.
Good life choice.
Yeah.
I'm sure the sample I sent was Oban 32.
Yes. So I think it was the Oban 33 and a quarter, or 33 and a third. That's
33 and a third.
33, or as they say in Dublin, 33 and a
turd.
All right, everyone. Well, this week we're very, very excited to have a Academy Award-winning actor, Daniel Day-Lewis, who is currently in studying. He's in method as a distiller for his new movie, There Will Be Whiskey, coming out this Christmas. We're really making this movie fast.
Yeah. Careful, he's going to drink your milkshake.
Yeah.
It's going to happen.
Oh, it'll be huge. Now, he's a man who's been at the forefront of the industry now for at least a decade, if not more. And his whiskey and his distillery have been just bubbling along, making folks happy. We welcome Mr. Jared Himstead, everybody. Hello, little Jared.
Thanks for having me. Was there
beard?
My pet beard?
Yeah.
It doesn't have any unmentionables like your cat to show, but
well, if it does, you have to worry.
You see what's under here.
And go, oh my God.
It's like a kilt.
So am I the last on this? Is like check off all the other Texas distillers and then
No,
shit.
This is how it falls. I mean, we throw names
alphabetical list.
That's how it falls, and the dates that you guys. But it is kind of weird. We did have the Garrison Brothers on
not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
Then we had the Licorice Boys. We had Heather Green.
Heather,
So
yeah.
we are kind of,
Yeah.
I mean, I would say more than any other state.
Might be
We've had
right.
more Texas distillers, what do you guys say? So that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Maybe next to Scotland. You guys are second to Scotland, I think, in number of guests.
Yeah.
So
Kentucky? No.
Not that many Kentucky, actually.
Yeah. Do they make whiskey in Kentucky? I just came back from Texas. I didn't hear anything about.
We keep asking, but they're scared to come on. They know we're going to ask the tough questions.
The question.
Like, bring it on.
Yeah.
That's right.
You guys are some heavy hitters.
Hey, before we go any further, what bottle can I open and drink?
I would start
in the glass there.
I would start with start with the unlabeled one. That's the Texas barley.
Okay.
Then the order I would normally go in.
I'm actually writing a piece about whiskey terroir right now, so that's good. I like it.
Oh yeah, you're into that whole thing.
I had some of Mark's Waterford single malts, and it blew me away. I can no longer deny the strong possibility.
I can't deny the strong possibility.
It's funny. We've had. I mean, obviously, there's been tons of conversations around this stuff, but one of my guys here is a big wine guy, and the two things that come up every year. Obviously, everyone talks about terroir slash provenance, but the regionality question comes up a lot with American single malt too, and of course, depending on the company, those questions come up, and usually somebody who knows a ton about wine will raise their hand and be like, the wine community is not like all in on this, like we've been debating this and disagreeing about this for like 40 years.
Yeah.
It's not a slam dunk. You might want to rethink using the term because it's very contentious in this other discipline that you're borrowing it from. And then the regionality, of course, other people with more experience can speak to the marketing around the regions of Scotland. Anyway, it's just that people keep trying to make connections. That's like, I don't know if you really want to do that. You're connecting to something that's not as cut and dry as you may think it is.
But what about? I mean, I always think with And we're completely off track here. This is not how we start
This
the
is not
show.
run of show.
No.
Hey, I'm not the guy that opened the bottle of Texas barley whiskey, so that's well, actually, I am, but
Yeah, you
Can
are.
I was just following. I was only following
For a
orders.
minute, I just thought, did I black out and dream that?
Can I ask a
Who opened that?
quick question?
Yeah.
Question. Since we derailed and we're digging into the Texas barley, specific varietal?
This is going to be Conlon.
Okay.
So yeah, the first year or two of Texas barley that actually worked was Conlon. Most everybody switched over to Genie currently, or at least the whiskey we've laid down since has been Genie.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the maltsters and farmers we work with are thinking that Odyssey is probably going to be what works best in the long run. They've done some trial crops with Odyssey, and
Nice.
there's been a bunch of other stuff too that didn't really work out, but those are the main three that have worked pretty well.
Is there a particular area of the state where they grow?
It's almost all west. Yeah, it's mostly
Okay.
Panhandle area.
Okay,
But-
so I have to ask a stupid
Yeah.
question. It's an embarrassing question. Is
For
the
you or for me?
Panhandle the part that goes out to the west, or the part goes up to the north?
Yes, it goes west and north. Sticks up. Oklahoma has a tiny sliver of Oklahoma that goes.
Yeah,
over
but,
the top
that's
of it.
definitely a panhandle because the whole damn
Right.
state looks like a pan. But
Right.
Oh yeah.
right,
It's that part of Texas. It's the only like rectangular. The rest of it is
big
all
smokestack
rivers.
looking part.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's the
All right.
Panhandle. Yeah.
gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Can we?
Follow-
Oh Jesus Christ! If this was a boat, we'd be totally adrift right now.
No, I'm going in circles. I think.
Probably.
Yeah, so I just
Reenacting
wanted
at
to
the end of night.
circle back to sort of the test plots and the trialing you did with Conlon, Genie, and Odyssey. Curious about Odyssey. Is that just in the Panhandle? Because that is a varietal, a UK varietal that we've been trying to kind of play out and how that behaves here in the US. And obviously, we don't get as much rain in
Right.
most of the growing regions. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you can talk about that a little bit, or
Yeah. Well, depending on what you believe about climate stuff, things are definitely changing. So parts of the state that were drier are getting a little bit wetter. So the irony, of course, is that the ag school, Texas A&M, down in College Station, was working on drought and heat resistant strains. And then we had grain that was molding on stock because it wasn't that dry.
too wet.
Sorry, it's not funny, but
It was
it's
too
kinda
wet.
funny.
So, yeah, the project started back in, I want to say 2012, 2013, but it wasn't until almost 2015, I think, 2015 before there was viable like malt grade stuff that was coming out of the fields. So they've tried a lot of different latitudes and longitudes over there. They've kind of landed on some sweet spots, but of course, you got to find farmers that are willing to do it and switch from whatever it is they're doing. So
Right.
as Texas Distilling gets bigger, the contracts, the commitments can be better every year. People
Right.
commit to the acreage. And of course, I think we've got 2 or 3 kind of small maltsters in state now. Yeah, there's a lot of moving parts. We've actually, whoa, not me. We've gone through like 7. I can't remember the other 4, but there's been 7 varietals so far laid down. And then across, I want to say it's something like 8 or 9 different farms. And then we also have been having maltsters doing floor and drum malting. So the spreadsheet of variables is kind of a mess. We're not really trying to do what Waterford's doing. I'm not that interested in that being the whole model or the destination for these whiskeys to get done, vintage, farm, varietal. The goal is to figure out what does best and eventually, not be laying down, just throwing everything at the wall. But we're pretty far from, I think, knowing which varietals grown where, malted how, by who, is what we actually want to keep going with. So for now, we're just kind of seeing where it goes, seeing what happens.
And is that something that a lot of I'm sorry.
You realize you're being like the anti-Liz right now. You know that.
I'm being
I'm derailing.
No,
I'm
no,
derailing.
Liz is.
Oh,
She's
Liz
like,
is being
she's like
banned.
wandering
He was
off in
kind
the
of
but-
anti-Liz last week too.
We were
She's
just
like,
Sorry, go ahead.
discussing, right, that there's the Texas Whiskey Trail, right, keeps growing. So there's a lot of distillers. Is that something that you're seeing a lot of collaboration with? Because to your point, it's if there's tons of different varietals that everyone is interested in, it becomes, not really sustainable, but there's no incentive for the farmer and kind of cost prohibitive. I don't know if that's something that you guys are.
Yeah, and just to clarify too, this isn't just our project. It started actually with one of the maltsters in the ag school. We came in pretty early. He was doing really tiny amounts for beer here and there, like in Austin. Yeah, we just tried to buy up as much as we could. Once there was a whole big chunk of, I can't remember how many truckloads it was.
Wow.
But we tried to just like, hey man, we'll buy almost all of it once he actually calls in and they've got a good crop. But since then, other maltsters have come in. We've got a seed company up north of Dallas that's trying to resurrect, Denton wheat and Texas rye varieties that have mostly been cover crops. So it's not. This isn't just a Balcones project. There's a huge chunk of people involved, and most of the Texas distillers are participating in some way. Yeah.
I
Nice.
really love this because this has been a lot more a distilling project than a brewing project. The brewers really haven't done a lot. They've done some, but the distillers are like hot out of the gate. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's a weird thing, right? Because, sorry, Marty, you're not getting to be the funny guy. We'll get to that.
no, I know it's. We've started the show in the middle of the show.
I know. He's 0 to 60 on this thing.
And
I think that's my fault.
I'm on board. Okay, like, I don't.
No, it's wholly Liz's fault. Let's be fair
Stop for
here.
a minute and get to the nucleus of the man himself first.
Yeah,
We'll talk about what he's doing.
that part's no fun.
I'll crush your
That part's a lot less interesting.
head. Crush Liz's head right now.
Anyway,
Jared, can I ask
we can come back.
about you? Can we ask? We do this usually at the beginning of every show. What got you into this? How, lead us down the path that brings us to where you are today in that room.
Yeah, pretty unlikely.
In the distilling.
Yeah. Nothing very purposeful other than, I did ceramics, like studio pottery in college, and I also did social work. So like a lot of people, you go to school, I didn't really know what I was going to do. Thought about, I would have had to go, I was thinking about going to grad school so I could teach college ceramics. Master's is terminal for most studio art. We just got busy with other stuff, and we didn't really want to leave Waco. I would have had to move somewhere, and we were recently out of school and married, and just kind of got sidetracked with other stuff. Ended up in nonprofit work for a long time. The nonprofit I work for is still here in town. They run the only homeless shelter we've got in town, after school tutoring programs for kids and teenagers. They got residential rehab facilities for men and women. They have like a kind of neighborhood grocery and kind of a food desert area, which is weirder in big cities, but in Texas, if you don't have a car, you could easily be 4 or 5 miles from the closest grocery store, and our public transportation is almost non-existent. So anyway, was doing that. And one of my buddies from college gave me a super crappy little homebrew kit as a wedding present in '99. And I made barely passable beer, the kind of stuff you make when you drink it because you made it, and you're okay with that, but it's not good. Eventually found a bunch of other homebrewing guys that were a lot more active and a lot more serious. And we started getting together pretty regularly. And of course, just like in the whiskey world or really any discipline, the reasons why people are involved is very different. So some people were just very creative. Some people, their beer was super boring, but they were technically extremely proficient. Some people just wanted to talk about history. Some people just want to talk about styles. Some people brew, they literally, back then the BJCP was a lot shorter, but they just go through and brew anything they've never made before because they want to be someone who's just like brewed everything that exists. Other people make an IPA every fucking month, or a Pilsner in Lew's case. Anyway, that got kind of serious.
When I homebrewed, I made porter all the time. I just loved porter.
Interesting.
Porter.
Huh. The heyday. Anchor.
Yeah.
Anchor to me was always the quintessential,
I just had an Anchor porter 2 days ago. It's still freaking good.
I haven't seen one on the shelf in a decade in Texas. I don't see Anchor beer here at all anymore. Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted to go local, and we got what we wanted, and now we don't see imports. Don't get the other stuff. I can't give me a spot in premium for save my life,
Yeah, the Belgians have disappeared.
Yep.
Sad.
Anyway, sidebars. The nonprofit thing was kind of accidental, and I didn't mean to end up doing that for that long. And I was ready to make something. Left there, opened a beer bar with a friend of mine. Goal was to do a pretty nano, half barrel brew pub in there. And this is 2006. So for Waco especially, we knew it was going to be an uphill battle. We were going to have to do a lot of education. We were going to have to basically create a market for, selling $12 Belgian long necks from some monks, it was a tall order when you can get like a 350 shiner. So we did do a lot of education, which comes in handy later. I got pretty used to having to convince people why they should spend money on these things that they never heard of before. But the space was small, permitting got messy, and about a year into it, I realized that we were not going to ever make beer there, which is why I left my job. I really was ready to make something. Also during that time period, when you now have all the beer you ever wanted, I found myself bored with it. And ended up going into a local bar, and I'd had whiskey before, and it just never clicked. I don't know if everybody remembers, their moment when all of a sudden it snapped and you go, oh, I get it now. But especially being a beer guy, everyone just always assumed, oh, then you like single malts and stuff. And it was always just kind of like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. I just didn't really care for it. And, but yeah, I had a buddy that was a good friend of mine. He had spent some time in Oxford. We were out one night, and I'm pretty sure at this point in hindsight, the closest to Isla I had was probably a Johnny Blue up until that point, anything with any peat on it. But sat down for an Ardbeg 10 at this bar at his choice. And as soon as I got into it, I was like, is there more like this? Then we were off to the races. Texas back then, there couldn't have been 40 single malts on the shelf at any liquor store in town. So we kind of went through everything we could find pretty rapidly with whatever the budget would afford, which was probably a bottle every 3 weeks or so. We could buy something, kill it. And so fast forward to me and Chip, who also was in our homebrew club, talking about I'm not even really doing beer anymore, man. I've just been drinking single malt like it's going to disappear next week. And then that kind of led to, pretty DIY folks, and coming from homebrew background especially, it was like the next obvious thing to do is to make your own in the garage for your own enjoyment. Not that we did, because that would be really illegal. But that would have been the smart thing to do. But anyway, it just seemed like at every point we were just kind of talking about it. And then it was like, we need to move out of the garage. Real estate in Waco, especially in kind of the industrial part of town, is all abandoned. Real estate's cheap. We went and bought a building for I want to say 45, 50 grand. We bought a 3,000 square foot welding shop. Next thing you know, we're hanging out with another friend and the brother-in-law, and he's got some money, did some real estate deals, and he's like, oh, I'd throw in on that. This stuff's actually not that bad. Anyway, it just kind of, one day we wake up and we own a building, and now we're trying to fill out the permits, and I'm trying to get stuff sent off to TTB and TABC to get permitted, and we were all doing other stuff. And a few months later, realizing it was time to start quitting jobs, and it was just taking up too much time trying to get everything going. So it's not a textbook. If somebody younger asks me how you get into the business, it's not a roadmap, or go to one of the schools that gives you a paper and get hired at one of the millions of places that have openings. Because I could have just as easily slipped on a banana peel and I mean, it's very unlikely to end up there the way I did. But yeah, it's crazy. It's pretty bonkers.
So when you guys first started Balcones, were you doing the majority of the whiskey making, or was it Chip? Or I mean, how much input did you have at first?
There was two of us. So, you know, I was the production manager, and there was no people nor production to manage. So that's pretty fun. No, like I said, there's two of us to start. So yeah, everybody did everything. I mean, the first 10 months or so, we're just building equipment. You know, we were knocking out walls and building platforms for mash tun. And with my ceramics background, you know, I was bricking in. We were doing open fire at first. So, you know, ordering 3,000 BTU burners or 3 million BTU burners and ceramic fire brick and stuff, and bricking in the stills and soldering up all our own copper and converting, you know, stainless dairy tanks into fermenters and all that crap. So it was It was great. We learned a lot. I would never. It's a lot more romantic, I think, to consumers to hear some of those stories than it is for people who do it.
That's what it always is.
We had this. Marty, you've probably seen it. We had this massive stainless paddle. It looks like a canoe paddle. This thing's got to be at least. It's taller than me, so it's got to be like 7 feet long.
Oh my god!
Super heavy. The handle is not hollow. It's a solid piece of like 1 inch.
Wow.
And so when you're stirring 500 gallons, especially in grain with malt, it's not so bad. But you're doing corn, you know, and it's like porridge in there, and you're stirring 500 gallons of that by hand. And someone tells you, "Hey, there's a motor for that. You take it." Yeah. Save a lot of money on workers' comp.
Well, your original distillery was quite small.
Yeah.
Quite cramped. The still house. I always told people it reminded me of the boiler room of a small high school, of an old small high school. You know, it's really, I didn't know how you guys even moved around in there, especially once those suckers were heated up. I thought, wow, it has to be really super hot.
It was super hot in there. Yeah, it was funny. I did a scale on like graph paper, and I made little to scale pieces of everything that was supposed to go in the building. So we've got our screw auger, I've got the mash tun, the stills, the fermenters and everything, chiller, boiler. And it took me a while of like just moving things around to try and figure out the best way to do it. But I mean, some of that stuff went in with like 3/4 inch, you know, gaps between things and stuff. It was super, super tight. But that's what you do when you've got the budget you've got, and you better make it work. So, but
then you got investors came in, and you were able to buy the new space.
We'd already bought the building. We were using the building we're currently in for just for barrel storage. Yeah, much bigger.
Huge.
Yeah, it's big. Yeah, it's 4-story. Four stories. Yeah, big old brick building. It's going to be 100 years old in 2 years. The building, so that's pretty cool. Got to figure out something cool. The 100-year anniversary of the building will be our 15-year anniversary, so we got to figure out some cool stuff to do that year.
15 years. Awesome. 2006 when you guys started.
2023. Exactly. Yeah, because of math.
Yeah,
it's tough. That's tough. I got kids. I know math's hard. It's okay. Got
a calculator right here.
But yeah, I don't know where we go from here.
Very handy. So maybe circling back.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was gonna say too. I was gonna answer something. I was gonna respond to something Lew said, and then we decided that we were gonna get back to the beginning, the run of show as intended. You were talking about like the beer versus whiskey. I think to some degree, you may or may not agree with this kind of commonly held narrative of the difference between kind of what happened in craft brewing in all the waves, and people that have drawn connections that maybe aren't true between what's been happening in craft beer for the last 30, 40 years and craft whiskey. But I've heard people say this too. You may have written about it for all I know. If you're going from post-war adjunct lager to American craft beer, it's night and day, right? It's not. they're just now being willing to make an adjunct lager, you know.
Yeah.
So we actually make beer in house too, and it's an interesting thing trying to do like a ton of lager and like convince people that like, no, you should be drinking this. But that's not a hard sell if you go from that to Sierra Nevada Pale or Anchor Porter. You know, that's an obvious, like, these are not interchangeable things. But the whiskey wasn't bad. We weren't just having a shortage of good whiskey in the world. So the dynamic and the drive, I think, for why people do this and what the purpose of it is very different. But I don't know why.
I did find it interesting that the initial craft distillers, some of them did try to force that narrative.
Yeah,
that's not true. That it's actually good whiskey.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like a very kind of disingenuous, or at least uninformed.
Yes,
we're actually in a glut. We were sitting on a pretty rad era of, you know, getting 23-year-old Glendronachs for like, you know, $110. You know,
right.
Those days that are long gone. Walking by stacks of antique collection and being like, how many $70 bottles of whiskey does a guy need? You know, yeah, go back in time and buy all that up and put the kids through college. Yeah. But I don't know why. So I think the local craft whiskey folks needed some narratives to differentiate what we're trying to do way more than beer did. It was obvious. You just get a glass and you're going to be like, oh yeah, the world needed this. We have too much. We've got plenty of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Honestly, if we're being frank, most small producers aren't, or if we're even coming close to making whiskey as good as some of our heroes, we're getting there now. You know, you better have some other compelling reason or a story to talk about what you're doing and why than just quality and price. Cause you're not, that's a tall order.
Yeah. And that, I was actually thinking about that as something I wanted to talk about, that it isn't just age. You know, it's not just time in the barrel. Craft distillers have gotten better at what they do, and it was not that great when some of them started. Yeah,
and unlike beer, I mean, Liz could probably speak to this. The science around distilling has skyrocketed. Unless you were in unless you're involved with IBD and getting their symposium books back in the day, there was so little science compared to beer. Man, you want to start homebrewing or start a brewery today? Not even like, you know, just old stuff. You want to find out some crazy new trend that someone started brewing like 2 months ago, there's already an article about it with technical details and what they did and how they pull it off and things they already discovered that don't work. Man, we were ordering books off like, you know, websites that have like old archival, like, you know, the S looks like an F, or is it backwards? Like stuff in old English, you know, and we're like trying to, you know, therefore, heretofore, you know, the distiller should, and I'm like, we don't know what half these words mean. It's hard to understand. Somebody wrote it in 1853, and you're like, I don't even know if this is relevant to what we're doing. Yeah. Even if I did know what they were saying. Luckily, people are friendly and they talk, so you just start asking questions. And a lot of the old guard are pretty open book about that stuff, but it's a lot harder to get into. Which I think, to your point about the early quality of craft, it's not nearly as accessible as beer making, I think.
Well, there's whole stores. I mean, here in Chicago, you can go to a brewing store and then
that's
you can get all the equipment. There's umpteen, you know, all
it's
the
legal.
grain you
It's
want.
legal.
So,
Yeah.
I think the legality of home brewing versus home distilling too is a major. Can you imagine how many people probably would have been home distilling and at some point been like, I probably shouldn't do this. I don't know what I'm doing. Or they would have gotten better before they went to people and asked for their money, you know?
Yeah. I remember somebody referring to it as depth of bench, that craft brewers had it easy because there were a lot of people out there who at least understood the basics of what was going on. Yeah. Whereas with distilling, they're kind of guessing it. They never actually had their hands on the thing.
And I'm sure you guys want to get into Texas stuff, but this leads into it nicely because then you add a whole other aspect that wasn't true for beer, that is true for whiskey, which is the large majority of small producers in America are making whiskey in places that literally never had before. So even if there had been just tomes of literature from Kentucky and Scotland and Tennessee and Indiana, what would that have meant for us here maybe not that much, or maybe some of it, but a whole lot of stuff would have been a question mark.
Hey, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, Pennsylvania. Yeah, I mean Maryland. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree to that, and I relate to that, Jared, because even, and this is back to your previous comment about, having literature, having educational materials available, and I would still, argue, and maybe this is changing just a few years ago, that, again, like to your point, it was very Scotch-based. I was like, well, this is relevant to what I'm doing over here. This isn't relevant to what I'm doing in Canada. And I would say, I mean, from that perspective, taking that one step further, to your point, it's not always relevant.
And even then, I feel like it was mostly academic stuff. It's like the philosophy professor's book is published and 500 people get it, and they're all also PhD, philosophy folks. Whereas a homebrewer can just jump on Amazon and spend their entire paycheck on brewing information. So yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting. I don't know if the legality of home distilling has a lot to do with it or not, but it does seem like pulling teeth to like figure out what you're doing.
Got that one.
When this book came out, I mean, this is the other thing too. This book was like $125.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. There's like 2,000 of those in the world or something. It's not.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
These aren't bestsellers by anyone's. Yeah. I don't know what we were talking about, but.
Hey, you were talking earlier about.
I think we were talking about whiskey books. We were talking about books about.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Before there wasn't enough whiskey books. Now there's too many.
Yeah.
Scads of them.
We were talking about Pinot Noir earlier, and we were talking more along grain, but this is something that I think we talked to Todd Leopold about, because at his distillery, he had to help control the evaporation rate because Denver was so dry, which you don't anticipate it. I think when I visited the distillery, it was raining, and you think, but you wake up in the morning and your lips are chapped. I just came back from Texas, and it just felt like I couldn't drink enough water. It was you're out, and you forget, Austin, San Antonio, Waco, it's a desert. Basically it's a desert. Little cactuses lived there before John Wayne ever got around to settling the country.
It's not a desert. It's I don't know why West Texas it feels dry. It's dry.
It's dry. I mean, I'm not saying it's the Sahara.
My college roommate lived outside of Austin. He had a pond
it's pretty dry
on his territory.
and hot. It was like in the 90s all week, and this little Irish guy was shriveling up like a slug on a salt pile. That's all.
Oh hell, he'd have been doing that if it was 80. Come on.
Well, that's true too.
Yeah.
Like a little sponge, and I dry up, desiccate, lay on my back, look a little dead roach.
But anytime someone puts water back on you, just pop
I
right
do.
back
I
in.
go right back.
Sponge.
I'm kind of like a sea monkey.
Yeah. Evaporation is
tough.
tough.
I mean, well, and how does that affect? How does the climate down by you in central Texas? How does that affect the rate of your whiskey? As far as the flavor of your whiskey, the character.
I think we're still trying to figure that out.
Really?
I give a few people a hard time. Tangentially, I never call them out, but they know who they are. I have so little interest in climate control, and my running joke with some of my redheaded brothers up north is that if you want to be in a different climate, like go distill there.
Yes.
But I just think.
No, I said that to brewers about water. They're like, "Oh, we can make the water any way we want it to." I'm like, "Why would you do that?"
Yeah.
God damn it, brew with what you got.
Yeah. Yeah. Have the place. We talk a lot here about. Once again, I don't relate super strong to the terroir and provenance terms, not the ideas, but just like those words don't really grab me. But we talk a lot about where we are in terms of kind of community, including non-human contributors to that community. So even if someone's not quite willing to attribute agency to these other actors, there's no denying that, microflora from where the grain is, the grain itself. You've got your barrels, you've got in-house. We don't do any sanitation of legit sterilization. We do kind of pseudo pasteurization on tanks and stuff, but we kind of intentionally have more of like a lambic vibe going on. And when we have new equipment, it doesn't behave properly for a while until it gets funky.
Are you in stainless or are you in wood?
We're in stainless.
Okay.
But yeah, fermenters are open. You're not boiling. You try not to boil stuff. I don't know. There's just a lot going on. Then you add the barrels. We got soil. We got rainfall from a whole different part of the country. I don't know. There's a lot going into it, and so to figure out. Part of me goes back to even my ceramic stuff, where any given clay has different properties and characteristics, and to successfully use it to create with, you do a lot of stuff early on that just to get to know it, understand how it behaves, and what its kind of parameters are, and what it does well. Don't make what you think you're going to make. Figure out what it does well and use it for the best application. So yes, we lose lots of evaporation, but trying to figure out between probably the main things we currently are working on in that to figure that code out, balance that equation is mostly cask size and a combination of cask size and entry proofs. But I think there's got to be a way to do it without, having humidify or cooling the warehouse, which just doesn't interest me at all.
Well, because your warehouses were mostly brick when I was there. I don't know if you guys changed anything. So it was pretty open.
Mm-hmm.
Floorscape and floor plan and just brick walls, and so that's it. It's kind of like what you'd find over in Scotland. It's it's still cement floors, but it's still kind of
air circulation, and
it's and it's there for the elements to get at it.
Yeah, and those walls are like 2 feet thick, so it takes a little while to change. But I mean, over the year, you guys were, Martin was just here and talking about the temperature swings, but if you got roughly like 40 to 60 high low in Scotland, like for the year, and it's going to be close to 30-degree difference from when I woke up this morning to the 2 in the afternoon today, and that happens all the time. So yeah, it's a lot to mitigate. I think the hardest part is managing the warehouse, because the regularity with which you need to check on things, it's not, hey, we need to check on it after next summer. It's you need to check on it 3 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now, 3 months from now. And it happens very, very often that just because of the cycling.
Yeah, it's driving faster.
Yeah, it's
okay.
I was telling somebody this the other day, if it's just, it was a hot climate panel that we did for the Whiskey Exchange show, virtual a few days ago. And if it was just that it's hot, you get deep penetration, but it would never come out, the fact that it's hot and then it's all the swings is the variations, the 40 degree swings in a day, the 50 degree swings in a day. That's when it's squeezing the tea bag back out and you're getting all the tannin and spice and like all the really like kind of the more burnt side of the wood sugar. And
you have open air. Do you have windows and doors open?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So speaking of consumer education, because you talked about that earlier, as a key player, as a tool today, and I guess just circling around the terroir discussion, because I think a lot of elements that you pointed out, I would consider terroir. I know micro terroir, totally believe in it, love it. I know I've talked about that on the show quite a bit in shows past, but maybe from a consumer perspective, like that's not being communicated, and maybe it's too esoteric for a consumer to relate to. So if it's not terroir, if that's not, here we go.
Yeah.
If it's not terroir, that term, what would that term be that would relay that message in an authentic way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that consumers really care that we can prove that the same varietal, and we controlled for all these things, and we grew it in all these different states or even counties in my state, and we can prove that our place has a specific thing. Or against a bunch of varietals, it's always there. See, you can always find it. That would be proof, right? They're not really. I don't think consumers are really that concerned with that. I think part of the success of craft brewing and beer, and I think even what's happening with natural biological wine and stuff like that, is just people just want to know. They want to know that you know what you're serving them.
Yeah.
And when you can go to the place, we had a restaurant right across the street that our friend owns. And, you can flip the menu and you can see where the tomatoes come from and where the beef comes from and where the greens came from and where they get the eggs from, and they're all relatively close. As soon as you do that, I don't know that the person eating necessarily wants to know what that tomato variety is or what kind of chickens the guy's got that he's getting the eggs from. That's kind of the box they want checked, is that and you're willing to talk about it. And they could ask more questions if they want to, but it already makes them feel like you're concerned about the kind of things they're concerned about. And that's really enough. They just want to know that you're on the same page with them.
It's like that episode of Portlandia where they order a chicken and then they end up being brought to the ranch where the chicken is being nursed and cared for and all this other stuff.
Is his name like Ned or something?
Yeah.
The chicken.
Well, this was also something that, Lance Winters at St. George. He was in town talking about his gin, and I asked where, are you getting your botanicals locally? So that has a uniqueness to place. And he goes, no, we get the best juniper from Italy. We get the best lemon from such and such. You go, okay, I can see that. But at the same time, now you're competing with the big boys. Mm-hmm. And the one thing little guys kind of have going for themselves is that, hey, everything's locally raised and locally made. And it's a marketing thing. And true, I think most people couldn't tell you they can't tell you the difference. They wouldn't know. They wouldn't even know the different varietals of corn and such. They just
sat there and talked to them about essential oil production. Would that be
you could sit there and talk to them about it. Well, if you back capture them long enough and they don't get bored.
Lew was talking about beer not embracing the local grain thing. And this is where I think distilling, brewing, making wine, whatever it is you're doing in the beverage alcohol space today is tricky, because you probably have a bunch of things, values, personal values or company values that are often going to butt up against each other, and you have to make some decisions. For a while there, everybody was trying to grow hops, all over the country. And at your brew pub, you've got vines out back and stuff. In Texas, that is a horrible, horrible use of water. So consumers think that is the coolest shit in the world. And even if you're just going to dry hop one beer with it because you got 2 pounds off your trellises in the back, you can still put that on the menu. And once a year, we've got this is our hops. You guys we're sitting under them all year. But it's a bad idea. You should get them from places they thrive. Mm-hmm. I can guarantee you the agricultural input will absolutely outweigh the transportation, the carbon footprint of getting them brought here from a place where they really love growing. So it's tough. You value local stuff and telling these good stories. If you have an environmental aspect to what you're trying to do, it gets tricky. Even us using Golden Promise, there's a little bit of historical preservation that matters to us, that bringing grain from Scotland when we have barley here. But this is something that's on the verge of being forgotten and left behind for efficiency reasons. And it's something kind of satisfying about knowing that you're going to do that and do it as best you can the way it was done, 30, 40 years ago, that everyone else has walked away from because of money reasons. That's worth it to me. I mean, is that it doesn't check the local box. Anyway, these things, it's all tricky, and there's no really good, easy answer. Barley's not grapes.
No, neither are hops.
Part of why it's magical and why it changed the world drastically with the, crop agriculture, 12,000, 10,000 years ago, is because it stores and it transports. So there's a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? It's not quite dissonance, but there's something in that area we're trying to negate. The very reason this thing is super useful is because it's hardy and it's not going to spoil. So it's a prime candidate for being transported from somewhere to somewhere else for use. And nobody in beer asks those questions. Nobody gives a crap, man. You're going to be like, did you guys grow these hops? Like, no, these are some crazy New Zealand hybrid, dwarf. It's Simcoe and Citra and blah, whatever. No one's ever used it before. It just has a number, and that's the cool thing to do.
Well, there's probably two camps. I mean, there are those that, love the fact that a distillery or a brewery is supporting local farmers. But then there's others who like the fact that, hey,
is that the best shit? I want the best shit.
Yeah, you went
or the new shit.
You went down to Tierra del Fuego, my favorite vacation spot, for some really cool.
Do you know where that is?
Tierra del Fuego. It's the very southern tip of South America.
Yeah, you know what country that is?
That is down
way down. Cool. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about this?
Yeah.
Somebody asked what we were drinking. We're drinking this now.
So it's kind of a mess here. Lineage is our most recent. It's our lowest proof. It's our lowest price. Kind of core single malt. It's available, a lot more available than any of the others. But it is a mix of, if you did the spreadsheet quadrant, we had always messed with Golden Promise for a long time.
And we are talking about lineage now.
Yeah, lineage. Yeah. But I've got it last because the other two things are kind of examples of the components that go into that. So lineage is the Texas one, the black label. That's what we started with. That's been Golden Promise and primarily virgin oak. So kind of a foot in both traditions in a weird way. Then I gave you the Texas barley and the refill. Once again, kind of reversing that dynamic. We got local barley, old world maturation tradition. The other one is old world barley, American kind of maturation tradition, rye bourbon. And so lineage is all those. It has both Golden Promise and refill and virgin oak, and also Texas barley and virgin and refill. The refill usually is somewhere about 60 to 70% of the blend. Anybody who's done any blending, the virgin packs a bunch way above its weight, so you can't do 50-50 and have the virgins really get stepped on pretty hard. So we're kind of building here. Refill Texas, and those are all in our own refill barrels, so some of those are bourbon rye. They may be previously single malt too. The black label, the Texas one, is Golden Promise and virgin, and then lineage is all of that, all those variables kind of mixed together.
The single malt's good. This is really good. This only the second one. I haven't gone to lineage yet. This has a really interesting cinnamon spice to it. It's very cinnamony on the tongue, It's delightful. And then I didn't realize is that bottled at 53 because it was quite easy to drink, and my little tongue, it's like a little baby's bottom. It's very gentle.
Man, that was your.
If a baby's ass was heavily scarred by alcohol, yeah, probably pretty close.
For the tasting notes, Jared.
Yeah.
Which ones are quite elaborate. How do you come up with the notes? Who comes up with
the tasting notes?
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys feel this way. I'm kind of tired of tasting notes. 13 years now of reading them, writing them.
Yeah.
I sure don't want to write them anymore.
I even in house, I've kind of switched to a much more pragmatic approach to doing them. So I don't know. We're trying to talk about transitions and how things relate to each other way more than just individual. Hey, you can taste these things and you can smell these things, or kind of qualifying those with either verbs or adjectives to go with. I don't know. Trying to communicate the beginning to end, the narrative and the dynamic stuff, as much as arguing about whether the blueberries are fresh or if they're the dried ones that are in oatmeal, or no, they're the
frozen frozen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. That's not as helpful because, of course, somebody reads that and goes, "They're more like blah blah blah" to me. Like, okay, so yeah, it's,
Michigan.
but I do my blending partner Gabe, and he's our warehouse manager. Kind of shepherds all the projects along and keeps track of everything. I blame it on the fact that he spent a lot of time. He was living in Europe in the oil and gas industry, but as such, he tends to be a little more floral with his language, and I think he's eaten a more wide variety of food and drink than me.
That's definitely a thing with European tasting notes.
So when I wanted to get silly, I usually commandeer him to do that, and sometimes he sends me stuff, and we laugh, and I'm just like, that is so ridiculous. It absolutely has to stay on there. That's just, and mine are just like, body, acidity kind of thing. I think about more like food and just like what's happening when, and is there enough residual sweetness when the tannin and spice come in? If there's an acid spike, like when is it happening and how does that relate to the thing that came before and after? Way more than whether I care if it's blood orange flesh or pith or, which melon. Is it the rind? That's not really that big a deal to me anymore.
Right, it's a marketing tool, right? Do you really think that a consumer really cares to read a romantic story about? Is it helpful for a consumer if I'm at the liquor store or whatever to read through that, or for me too? And I'm trying to put my consumer hat on, which is hard some days,
especially with that bun.
I know, right? Exactly. But I think in a way, if there's very detailed tasting notes, then if I'm a consumer and I'm not getting it, then I feel kind of dumb, right?
Right.
Yeah,
or that it's a bad bottle.
Well, there's a couple things. Well, I'll let Marty. He looked like he was going to say something.
I was going to say also too, the thing with tasting notes, I used to hate giving any kind of tasting notes when I did staff trainings. I'd always ask them to write down their own, 3 descriptors that you could use when talking to a customer. Because one, the Jedi mind trick always comes into play. Yeah. So Liz, to a point, when a consumer does see tasting notes, they automatically make them their own in their own head. They go, "Yeah, I didn't taste it
the black pepper.
But that mule ear and that."
I've never tasted whole melon.
Tears of Angelina Jolie. I never tasted
that. Well, it's tough because they're useful for different things at different stages, right? So we kind of have a running thing in front of house for people that come here, do a tour, do a tasting, or just hang out in our bar and have a few drinks. One of the kind of driving principles for anyone who's working up there and interacting with the public and our reps and stuff that are on the ground wherever they are. I always want to hear feedback that they're very educational and informative. Mm-hmm. But if that's not paired with welcoming and inviting and warm, then they fucked up.
Yeah,
I absolutely want you to pass on information, and I want you to do it in a way that feels like you're inviting someone into something that you really care about, that matters to you. And if you're ever gatekeeping, if you're ever weaponizing your experience, then you probably should go somewhere else. Even if you're just someone I'm at the bar with, I'd rather you be far away from me.
Weaponizing your experience.
I mean, people have been doing it with beer and wine and food forever. Cars, whatever. I'm really into bikes, and guys do it there too.
Yep.
You ever go to a bike shop? If you're not a bike guy and they know it, they treat you like crap. It's just like there's no reason for it. But you've probably read. I spend more time reading like sensory science stuff and kind of formatting research and data analysis stuff for sensory more than I do actually like whiskey stuff and beer stuff these days. But talking about smells is completely neurologically almost impossible and counterintuitive. So when I was new and enjoying things, it wasn't that I needed someone to tell me. I was really bad, and everyone should be. Biologically, we should all be very horrible at putting words to smells. So it helped me a lot when you start going, oh, okay. And these are good examples by Hall of Famers of the kinds of ways you can talk about what you're smelling and tasting. So it's really helpful then, especially if that's how you're approaching it. But then you get to a point, of course, where if you consider yourself quite the collector or quite the connoisseur or whatever, and then of course you're just going to bucket the whole thing, and anything they tell you that you're going to get in there, they're going to be like, whatever, right? I mean, just inherently you're going to say that's bullshit. The guy's full of crap. And if you want people to get certain things, it's absolutely like, please tell them 4 or 5 things. And it doesn't have to just be manipulation. It can be really helpful. Like with Baby Blue, for example, this is young corn whiskey. It's meant to be very grain forward. At the same time, super influenced by the fruit and floral and acidity of very light refilled space sides. Just doing it with corn. If you understand that that's kind of at least where the inspiration goes, then you can judge whether we succeeded or not. You may decide, I don't really like, this tastes a lot like corn. Well, like, cool. I just told you that we were very much wanted to do that. That's not a fail that you can say you don't like it. I don't know. The role of intention, language.
Yeah.
If I want someone to think sweet tea and cornbread and tortillas when they taste that, sometimes that's helpful. Even if you decide you don't like it, you can give it a little bit more charitable read, I think, if you know what the person's going for. Like your Glenmo, when they tell you this is for mixing, like, good to know. Right? I was about to drink it neat.
I actually kind of wish the Canadians would do that more often.
Yeah.
Tell me what that whiskey's supposed to be.
But it's not really so much hoodwinking anybody to me as much as kind of communicating intention and expectations can be helpful, right? I don't know.
I had a question that I see we're starting to get close to the end here. I wanted to get this in. Is it correct that you were involved in the proposed single malt American single malt definitions? And I was curious about something, and it bothers me that I hadn't thought of this before, because I mean, you and I have gone out on the road with this stuff and talked about it. Why 700 liters?
That's just a nod to export. That's just a nod to export. That's just a look to export. That's the SWA max.
Oh, okay.
And also EU. I don't know if Australia too maybe has that as the max. I think they do. Really? They pretty much have the same EU regs.
So if you're going to send it there, you have to be under that.
Yeah, which is weird.
Okay.
That you have
to. It is weird. It just seems like such an arbitrary number.
Yeah, it does. And that just like 80 and 125 and all these other arbitrary numbers,
Yeah. Yeah.
But Jared, where is Balcones? Balcones is in recent years. I mean, you guys have really fanned out your distribution. Plus, also, are you still doing the barrel program?
Yeah. Yep.
So that's still a thing. You want to talk about that a little bit?
We can. Alex Elrod is our staff guy that handles the single barrel program. We do a ton of it, but the funny thing is, I think with some of the lack of preparation that we've all witnessed, Kentucky was definitely not ready for what's happening now. All we keep hearing back is just people, bars and clubs and liquor stores definitely want to have tons of stuff on the shelf that's exclusive to them that they picked, and they keep the availability of Kentucky just keeps going down, right? So I think we do more of it than I would like to do long term, but for now I think small producers are rushing in and being able to fill that need where, Four Roses and whoever else are telling them like, yeah, we've got, 60% of what we had last year for the state, that kind of stuff. So we do a lot. I mean, we did almost as much single malt and single barrels not last year, 2019, 2018. We did almost as much single malt in single barrels as we did blended, which is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. I think a lot of the bigger producers, like, they're not even spending 1% of production on single barrels, and ours is, I mean, it hovers close to 5. I mean, it's a lot.
And can you do that for folks outside the U.S.?
Yeah,
that's no problem.
Yeah, we've got some stuff going to Australia. We've done a ton of stuff with SMWS, which isn't exactly the same, but yeah, we love doing that stuff when we can. And who would they contact if folks are interested? Oh, if you just send an email to any Balcones address, it'll get to Alex Elrod, and he'll hook you up. You asked me something before single barrels. What did you say before that? Whatever. There was something else. Distribution. Oh, are you? How many states are you in? 48, 49. I don't think we're in Hawaii, but
Yeah.
I think we're pretty much everywhere else. I think. I'm always surprised. I'm always surprised at some of the smaller folks, how much the international stuff they've done. We haven't really done that much, and I'm always kind of like, man, maybe we missed that seminar where everybody was like, you need to ship a ton to Europe and Japan and stuff.
Seems like that's popping up quite a bit. Yeah, that's what I've noticed as well.
Been with, yeah.
Well, I would assume the drinkers there are just as curious as the ones here.
Yeah, I guess we've been kind of just, you pick the next thing. The next thing was kind of like, yeah, we're not even all over the U.S. yet. Let's get that checked out. But when I talked to other people who, of course, when the tariff stuff happened and every interview anybody had was asking how it's affecting you, I was like, I don't know. We don't. I bet we don't. I bet we don't send 10 pallets, abroad a year. I don't know. And other people were like having a really hard time. I was like, oh crap, they must be sending a lot more than I thought.
Are you up in Canada?
No.
See, I would think that might be an interesting little thing. Since
makes
Crown
everything so
Royal is so
expensive.
huge in Texas, you have to be the Crown Royal of Canada.
It's not Crown Royal. It's Texas Crown.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Different.
You go down.
Different level of illegality there.
Go down there, and everything just becomes Texas.
The problem is, Texas Crown's not even made by Crown Royal, is it? Texas Crown is made by somebody else. I don't remember who it is.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
It's not a Crown Royal variant. It's like somebody else's product.
Yeah, it's not a
huge down here.
Well, I know Crown
Wildly
Royal.
illegal. Yeah,
DIAGEO's Crown Royal sold, was.
It does well here too, for sure. The bags.
That was 1 million cases in Texas alone.
People love the bags.
Texas?
Yeah, huge.
Yeah.
At one point, when Crown Royal was selling 4 million cases about 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago when I was still at DIAGEO, they was selling 4 million cases in North America, and 1 million of those, so a quarter of all the cases, have been sold in Texas.
Yeah, we used to be the biggest Weller market too, when that was easy to get, and Texas was always one of the good ones. I'd run by the liquor store and pick up handles of Weller 12 or 107 to take to Kentucky with me for folks that lived there that couldn't get it back in the day. Pretty funny. It's like, you're leaving town, go pick up multiple cases of handles for someone.
So here that Texas Crown is made by Mexcor.
Okay.
Oh, of course, my old employer,
based in Houston.
Yeah.
Not distilled in Houston. That's the post office. Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, we did have a number of comments, and I think we had a question just as we're wrapping up.
I just wanted to do a shout out to the one guy, Dave Gallup, who said he made it in. Hey, Dave.
Yeah, Dave. Yay.
Yeah. Hey, Dave.
I drank with him last winter. We actually had a huge day of whiskey drinking. Him and about 4 other guys.
Lou, if everybody you drank with watched this show, we would be.
We'd break the internet.
Stars. So we'll go to the question, and actually we have someone from Russia joining, and that's where the question is coming from, which is exciting. I don't know if we've had a viewer from Russia before, so thank you.
I don't think so.
Question for Jared: what do you think of sweetened whiskey liqueurs like a Drambuie or Jim Beam apple bourbon?
I would not put those two products in any category of overlapping anything. I love Drambuie, man. Rusty Nail or even Drambuie right on a big rock is badass.
Have you had that 15-year-old?
No.
Yeah. The 15 is delicious.
Taking notes. I didn't know that was a thing.
That thing is a
if I'm
killer.
not mistaken, they use a single malt for that.
Yes.
As opposed to a blend for the standard.
Oh my God! It is like sunlight on water. It is just
awesome.
amazing.
It's a Rusty Nail in a bottle. It doesn't really need anything.
Yeah. Here in Texas, we can only use things in our bar that we make. We can't have any outside stuff. So of course, our poor bartenders trying to figure out how to reinvent some things. I'm going to be getting like a little rotovap so they can do some botanicals and stuff, literally just for the front of house. Stuff we'll never label or sell to the public, but they are working right now. Our bar manager is also one of our blenders, and he's working on figuring out some Texas botanical stuff to do basically like a Drambuie with some local stuff, which that's probably the first thing he's asked me about that I was like, hell yeah, as opposed to sure, whatever. It's like if you want to do an absinthe and you want to do a Drambuie knockoff, I'm down for either one of those. Anything else is like la la la, whatever. But yeah, there's something about if we're thinking about it like food. I mean, these are almost like cocktails, right? Like there's something about Drambuie where it's like all the decisions are following the base spirit. Right? The base spirit is absolutely the driver, just like a good old fashioned or Manhattan. If they're doing a good job, you're enhancing and accentuating things, but you're starting with this. That is absolutely not what Fireball or Jim Beam Apple Bourbon are about. This is about hiding, obfuscating the basic, the core of the thing. Right. So that's, to me, those are philosophically extremely different things.
Yeah, like I said, that 15-year-old is like a cocktail in a bottle.
I didn't know that was a thing, man. I'm gonna go.
It's really good. A little hard to get nowadays. I haven't seen this often.
No, I have one bottle that I keep hidden in the back of the cabinet because I don't want anybody experimenting. Just
actually, Lew, that was when the little perks of my days at Benedictine was they had Drambuie too. So I did snag a couple bottles of the 15. If Bacardi's listening, no, he didn't.
Statute of limitations.
Right, it might be.
There's the answer. And I'm sorry to continue on forward, but we have to wrap up.
Yeah, you go.
Yep, just some shout outs. Denise Jones says hi from sunny but cold northern Nevada. Still in coffee mode, but I will watch y'all drink a nice dram on a Tuesday afternoon. And indeed, we did. So cheers. Brad, our boy Brad, says, hey. Donald Snyder says, hello from Orlando. Big fan of Jared.
Oh, I don't have fans. What a weird thing to say. Come on, Donald.
Michael says, hi from Atlanta. They're single malts. Heart emoji. Going out to you, Jared. Heart emojis your way.
I'm trying to remember what did Donald say blasphemy about? Was that? Oh, it was when we said we don't like tasting notes.
Yeah, I don't know. He also said, I hear he has the world's longest line arm.
Whoa.
I don't.
That's a double entendre, if you know what I'm talking about.
That's what you would think, Marty. Wow. Well, Marty, our stills weren't installed when you were down here, were they?
No.
Yeah.
No. You didn't have anything other than the barrels in the.
If I was brand rep, I would share my screen or have some sort of thing I could show you real quick. I have no idea where I might have pictures of things, but it is funny, and I tell people when they're here, the Richard Forsyth, both senior and junior, were here, and we're commissioning stuff, and I start asking questions about some of the dimensions, proportions, decisions they made, and it's like, man, he's like, oh man, these are by far the biggest condensers we've ever made, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm expecting like some really cool heat exchange calculations, some sort of, and he's like, oh no, this room was huge. That's why we made them so big. I'm like, I know how much copper costs. Copper is not cheap. Yeah, not super appreciated there. But so yeah, I don't know if it's true or not. They'd said that our stills, just because of the room, are definitely bigger than any they've made for Scotland, which is, everybody likes to argue and fight about who's are taller. So they're definitely taller than all those, which of course was not intentional. But our original building was a single pitch roof. So the stills were over here, the condensers are up here, everything's running with gravity. So we just put things where we had to. I think my slope was like 3/4 of an inch over every 10 feet. I mean, my plumbing to go from the spirit safe to ISRs was very shallow. So they went exactly the only place they could go. Because of that, they ended up being kind of across the building and upsloped. So when we were moving in here, trying to keep the dynamics, the physics and stuff similar, their solution was to coil it. So they are going at like a 5 to 6 degree incline. And, our old pots were like 1,000 liter with like 17, 19 foot 5 degree slope straight line arm on it before it hit the condenser. So these things do kind of spiral up. They look like a spring to recreate that. But if you were to open it up, it would be stupid long. I don't know how long it would be, but it would be very long.
It's like an intestine or something.
Yeah, it's
like a what?
An
So like
intestine.
an
Murder.
intestine?
Yeah.
Oh, right. When you stretch
Okay.
Coiled up and stuff.
intestines
Yeah.
out.
Awesome.
36
Is that
Moving,
time, Liz?
moving on. Kalung, I'm going to mispronounce it, but he says hello from Chicago. Thank you for joining. And I
Was this a
think
question
that
from Marty?
No, that's Lou saying, does Marty seem less loud?
Denise Jones asked, is GB still using 50-liter barrels to assert their character? I was able to second fill 10 barrels in Germany for my R&D whiskeys in Bamberg. Fabulous material for second fills. Lou, I don't know if
I don't know.
Yeah, I think they do 10s or they do 15s and 30s maybe. They're doing full size barrels too now. They're up to 53 gallon.
cool.
The longer stuff.
Awesome. Well, I think that concludes our little session with you, Jared. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate that. And of course,
Oh my God! Yes.
whiskey. So
Great whiskeys. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah. Let me know what y'all think. Yeah, it's always fun to
Three
share
more.
stuff with people.
It's too early for me to finish
Oh,
up
and my thanks
bottles.
to my wife who had to run to the FedEx place this morning to pick them up. Thank you.
Aw.
Aw. Lou's not married. He's totally lying.
Shut up. Shut up.
Anyway, so we're excited to have our next guest next week. So I don't know, spitting distance from Lou. So we're gonna have Herman from Dad's Hat on.
Yeah, you laugh, but with a high wind, I could maybe make it.
It's a possibility. Yeah, some physics involved, but anyway, so we're going to be chatting about Pennsylvania Rye next week, so come back and join us. But again, Jared, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Good to see y'all.
Jared, you be good.
Thanks, man.
I'm definitely doing that distillery trail down in Texas sometime soon.
Real soon.
Cool.
Keep a lookout.
Cool.
And a fire burning out front.
Have the porch light on. That's what we do.
Yeah. Or keep the pickup engine on just in case you see him coming.
Yeah, I got a block heater on the old Dodge,
All right.
Thanks,
Next week,
everyone.
guys.
That's cool.
Cheers.
Thanks, Jared.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Be good. Oops.